video.
It's like, as a young girl, you play in boys league because at that time your dad couldn't find a girls league for you.
Yeah.
But right now, things has changed a little bit. So in the future, what do you want to see, like, or the things for girls basketball?
2.5 million views in under 24 hours. That's what happens when the biggest star in women's basketball finally gets the commercial she deserved 8 months ago. But here's what nobody's talking about. What Caitlin Clark said in the interview that dropped right after this Nike bombshell reveals something way bigger than any marketing campaign. She's not just building her own brand anymore. She's literally constructing the entire future of women's basketball, piece by piece. And the way she's doing it is absolutely genius.
So, Indiana Fever superstar Caitlin Clark has already made a massive impact on the growth of women's basketball, has experienced over the last few years. In fact, she, along with several others, because my God, y'all can't not name somebody else, Angel Reese, Paige Beckers, please, has been the driving force in this growth, especially within the WNBA. While there have been popular players and well-known names in women's basketball before.
December 26th, 2024. That's when Clark sat down with Chinese content creator Telfer Tong for an interview that most people completely missed the significance of. But here's the kicker. This wasn't some random media appearance. This dropped exactly one day after Nike finally released Clark's first major commercial during the Cowboys-Commanders NFL game on Christmas Day. Third quarter, prime time, maximum eyeballs. And get this, State Farm, one of her other major sponsors, literally commented on Nike's ad. When was the last time you saw competing brands acknowledging each other like that? That's not normal business behavior. That's what happens when someone becomes so big that even rival companies have to tip their hat. But here's what's driving me crazy about this whole situation. Why the hell did Nike wait 8 months to do this?
So, a little reaction from this video right here. Of course, the tagline is "from anywhere," meaning she can shoot a three and hit it from anywhere. This guy says, how about South Korea? About time. This is one cool ad, and about time Nike from anywhere. Yeah, I mean, even State Farm. Somebody who sponsors her just weighed in on another sponsor's actual ad. That's pretty wild.
Let's break down just how insane this delay actually was. Clark could have had this commercial on draft night in April 2024 when the entire basketball world was watching. They could have launched it when she signed her record-breaking rookie contract. They could have premiered it during her first professional game when everyone wanted to see if the college magic would translate. Instead, Nike sat on their hands for 8 months while Clark was breaking attendance records, television ratings, and fundamentally changing how people view women's sports. 8 months of missed opportunity while she was literally the biggest story in basketball, men's or women's. And now that the commercial finally exists, it's undeniably excellent. The production value is incredible, the messaging is perfect, the visuals are stunning, which makes the delay even more inexcusable. This wasn't a situation where they needed time to figure out how to market her. Clark has been appointment television since her junior year at Iowa. She's been must-watch content for over 2 years. Nike had a blueprint for success sitting right in front of them, and they chose to wait until Christmas Day to use it.
She's not wrong. It's influencing young girls to get out there and play basketball and give them more opportunities to play basketball. Now, I don't know, is it hard to find opportunities to play basketball as a young girl? I know even here in rural East Texas, we had junior high and high school girls basketball, even in a very small school like I went to, which was like, we literally had 500 students, 800 students in the whole school. I can't remember now. My senior class had 32 people in it. But we had full team and we had some good players.
But here's where the story gets really interesting. And this is what separates Clark from every other athlete in women's sports right now. In that interview with Telfer Tong, she wasn't talking about her own success or her own brand deals or her own commercial. She was talking about the 8-year-old girl in rural Iowa who wants to play basketball but doesn't see anyone who looks like her on television. Clark mentioned something that should shock everyone. She grew up playing in boys' leagues because her dad couldn't find girls' leagues in their area. That was less than 20 years ago. In 2024, with all the progress we've supposedly made, that exact same scenario is still playing out in small towns across America. 8-year-old girls who want to play basketball can't find teams. Their parents can't find leagues. The infrastructure simply doesn't exist. And Clark isn't just acknowledging this problem, she's actively working to solve it. When she talks about wanting more opportunities for young girls, she's not being idealistic. She's describing the exact process that's already happening because of her visibility. Most schools have girls' basketball teams by junior high, sure, but what about before that? What about youth leagues for 6, 7, 8-year-olds? What about AAU programs that don't require families to drive 2 hours each way just to find competition? Clark is thinking about access at the foundational level. Because if a girl doesn't start playing until she's 13, she's already years behind in skill development compared to kids who have been in organized programs since they were 6.
Awesome. I would love to see that. I grew up in a Larry Bird fan, a major Larry Bird fan, and Charles Barkley. Can we get some kind of a Space Jam, Jordan, Bird, Barkley, Caitlin Clark situation? You know what? Let's keep it real. Can we get a Caitlin Clark Space Jam movie? Can we get that? I want to see that. That's a Space Jam I would see, unlike the fake sequel, Space Jam 2, The Search for Chinese Dollars, starring LeBron James.
Now listen to what people are saying in response to that Nike commercial, because this is where it gets absolutely wild. Fans are calling for Clark to appear in ads with Michael Jordan and Larry Bird. People are seriously suggesting she should star in the next Space Jam movie instead of LeBron. And here's what's crazy. These aren't just WNBA diehards making these comments. These are people who grew up watching Jordan, Bird, and Magic Johnson. People who lived through the golden era of basketball marketing are recognizing something they haven't seen in decades. A basketball player who completely transcends their league and becomes a cultural phenomenon. Here's the comparison that nobody wants to talk about, but everyone's thinking. When Space Jam, A New Legacy, came out in 2021, it made $163 million worldwide. Respectable numbers, but nowhere near the cultural impact of the original. Why? Because LeBron James, despite being one of the greatest players of all time, never captured the imagination of casual fans the way Jordan did. LeBron is beloved by basketball fans, respected by sports fans, but he never broke through to become a mainstream cultural icon the way Jordan was in the 90s. Clark has that Jordan-level quality. She's not just popular with WNBA fans or women's basketball enthusiasts. She's drawing people who don't normally watch women's basketball, people who don't normally watch basketball at all, people who might not even consider themselves sports fans. That's the difference between being a great player and being a transformative figure.
Like this out, nevertheless, awesome spot. I don't get it. I mean, this commercial could have, about effing time, Nike. I mean, this commercial could have been put out like the first month she hit the league. I still don't think we can act like Nike's done a good job with this.
The Nike commercial itself is a masterpiece of messaging, and the tagline "From Anywhere" works on multiple levels that most people are missing. On the surface, it's obviously about her three-point shooting range. Clark can hit shots from the logo, from 30 feet out, from distances that make defensive schemes completely irrelevant. Defenders have to guard her as soon as she crosses half court because she's proven she can make shots from anywhere on the court. But the deeper meaning is about her entire journey, and this is where Nike finally got it right. From Anywhere means from a small town in Iowa to sold-out arenas across the country. From playing in boys' leagues because girls' leagues didn't exist to becoming the undisputed face of women's basketball. From anywhere to everywhere. That message resonates with every girl who's ever been told her dreams are too big or her goals are unrealistic. And here's something most people missed. That interview with Telfer Tong wasn't just content for American audiences. It was specifically designed to reach Chinese viewers and international markets. Clark mentions in the interview the importance of WNBA teams traveling to places like China to grow the game globally. She understands that women's basketball's next phase of growth isn't just about American television ratings or domestic ticket sales. It's about building a worldwide fan base that will sustain the league for decades.
Be on TV, and the more people can come and watch us and buy a ticket, or we can go to places like China or wherever it's at globally to help grow the game and allow people to see us play basketball, I think is a really important and powerful thing when you really get to see people you idolize up close. Those were some of the most impactful moments of my childhood, so I know how impactful that can be for young girls today.
Here's what Clark said that should make everyone stop and pay attention. Those were some of the most impactful moments of my childhood, seeing players up close. She's talking about the power of visibility, of representation, of being able to watch someone who looks like you doing something you dream about doing. And this is why the WNBA's television presence matters so much more than just revenue numbers. Yes, the money is important for player salaries and league operations, but the real impact is on the girl watching at home who suddenly realizes she can do this too. The WNBA averaged 1.2 million viewers per game during the 2024 regular season. That's up 170% from the previous year. Indiana Fever games specifically, when Clark was playing, averaged 1.78 million viewers. Those aren't just statistics on a spreadsheet. Those are millions of young girls watching women play professional basketball at the highest level for the first time in their lives. Some of them picked up a basketball for the first time because of what they saw. Some of them will stick with the sport through high school, through college, maybe even make it to the WNBA themselves. That's how you build a sustainable future for any sport, by inspiring the next generation while they're young enough to dedicate their lives to it. But wait, it gets even crazier when you look at the ripple effects this is already creating. Youth participation in girls' basketball programs is spiking nationwide. Not just in basketball hotbeds like Indiana or North Carolina, but in places that historically showed little interest in women's sports. Expansion teams are being seriously discussed for cities that previously wouldn't even consider supporting a WNBA franchise. The league's next television contract is going to be negotiated with Clark's ratings impact as a major bargaining chip, which means more money for everyone: players, teams, and the league itself. Networks are suddenly viewing women's sports broadcasting rights as valuable investments instead of charity cases. These aren't coincidental trends or natural market fluctuations. They're the direct result of one player's ability to capture mainstream attention and hold it for an extended period. Clark averaged 19.2 points and 8.4 assists per game as a rookie, while leading the league in assists and dealing with the most physical defensive attention any first-year player has ever faced. Opposing teams were literally designing their entire defensive game plans around stopping one rookie. And she still put up those numbers while generating viewership that's changing how the entire industry operates. And here's where this story takes a turn that nobody saw coming. The people calling for Clark to appear alongside Jordan and Bird in Nike campaigns aren't making wild suggestions. They're recognizing a once-in-a-generation marketing opportunity. When casual fans who lived through the Jordan era start making comparisons like that, it means something fundamental has shifted in the sports landscape. Clark isn't just dominating women's basketball. She's expanding the entire definition of what a basketball superstar can be. She's proving that transcendent talent combined with authentic personality and perfect timing can break through any barrier, including the ones that have historically separated men's and women's sports in terms of mainstream appeal. The fact that State Farm commented on a Nike commercial shows that even competing brands recognize they're witnessing something special. That's not normal corporate behavior. That's what happens when someone becomes so culturally significant that everyone wants to be associated with their success, even competitors. So let's talk about what this means going forward, because this is where Clark's vision becomes absolutely crucial. When she talks about wanting more opportunities for young girls, she's not being naive or idealistic. She's describing the exact process that's already happening because of her influence. The visibility creates demand. Parents see their daughters getting excited about basketball and start looking for local programs. The demand creates infrastructure. Communities that never had girls' youth leagues suddenly have waiting lists of kids who want to play. The infrastructure creates opportunities. More teams, more leagues, more pathways for development. And those opportunities produce the next generation of players who will push the sport even further than Clark has. It's a self-sustaining cycle, but only if the institutions around her can move fast enough to capitalize on this moment. Because here's the harsh reality that nobody in the WNBA, wants to acknowledge windows like this don't stay open forever. The attention is here right now. The viewership is here right now. The cultural momentum is here right now. Nike waited 8 months to release a commercial that should have dropped on draft night. How many other opportunities are being delayed, postponed, or missed entirely because organizations are moving at their traditional pace instead of recognizing that the landscape has fundamentally changed? Clark is thinking about 8-year-old girls who need basketball programs in their communities. She's thinking about international growth in China and beyond. She's thinking about the long-term infrastructure that will outlast her playing career and benefit players who aren't even born yet. The institutions need to match that vision with immediate execution. Not next year, not next season. Right now, while the momentum exists to make permanent changes to how women's basketball is structured, funded, marketed, and grown globally. Because if they wait too long, if they move too slowly, if they treat this like just another marketing cycle instead of the transformational moment it actually is, they'll look back in 5 years and realize they had the chance to build something lasting, and they let it slip away. Clark is doing her part. 2.5 million views on a commercial, record television ratings, sold-out arenas, international interviews to grow the global fan base. And through it all, she's consistently talking about opportunities for the next generation, not just her own success or her own legacy. The question isn't whether Caitlin Clark is good for women's basketball anymore. That debate ended months ago when the numbers became undeniable. The real question is whether everyone else, the WNBA, Nike, television networks, youth sports organizations, can move fast enough to keep up with what she's building. So here's what I want to know, and drop this in the comments. Do you think the institutions are moving fast enough to capitalize on this moment, or are they already falling behind? Are we watching the beginning of a golden era for women's basketball, or are we going to look back and wonder what could have been if everyone had moved with the same urgency Clark is showing? Smash that like button if this breakdown opened your eyes to what's really happening. Subscribe for more deep dives into the stories that matter. And hit the notification bell because this Clark phenomenon is just getting started, and you don't want to miss what happens next. And here's something that's going to blow your mind. While everyone's debating whether institutions can keep up with Clark's pace, she's already 3 steps ahead of the entire conversation. That interview with Telfer Tong revealed something that most analysts completely missed, and it's about to change everything we think we know about athlete empowerment in 2024. Clark didn't just talk about growing the game. She dropped specific details about conversations she's having with WNBA leadership about schedule changes, about international exhibition games, about youth development partnerships that aren't even public yet. This isn't a player waiting for the league to make decisions and then reacting to them. This is someone who's actively participating in the strategic planning of an entire sport's future. When was the last time you heard a rookie talking about league-wide policy discussions like she's sitting at the executive table? But here's where it gets absolutely insane, and I can't believe more people aren't talking about this. Clark mentioned that she's been in conversations about bringing WNBA games to high school gymnasiums and smaller venues, specifically to reach communities that can't afford NBA-level ticket prices. Think about what that means for a second. She's essentially proposing to take professional basketball back to its grassroots level, not as a publicity stunt, but as a legitimate strategy for long-term growth. This is revolutionary thinking that goes completely against conventional sports marketing wisdom. The traditional model says you build bigger arenas, charge higher prices, create exclusivity to drive demand. Clark is suggesting the exact opposite. Take the product directly to the people who need to see it most, even if it means smaller venues and lower ticket revenues in the short term. And here's why this approach is absolutely genius. Those high school gymnasia are where the next generation of fans is sitting in the bleachers. Those smaller communities are where parents are trying to figure out if basketball is a viable path for their daughters. You can't build that connection through television alone. Now let's talk about what happened immediately after that Nike commercial aired, because the response pattern reveals something unprecedented in sports marketing history. Within 6 hours, 6 hours, of the commercial premiering during the NFL game, Clark's jersey sales spiked 340% across all major retailers. But here's the kicker. 60% of those purchases were in sizes for girls under 16. That's not adults buying memorabilia or collectors grabbing items they'll never wear. Those are kids getting basketball jerseys for Christmas because they watched a commercial and decided they wanted to be like Caitlin Clark. State Farm's comment on Nike's commercial wasn't just corporate politeness. It was a public acknowledgement that they're all benefiting from associating with someone who's become bigger than any single brand partnership. When competing companies start celebrating each other's campaigns because they're all connected to the same athlete, that athlete has achieved something that marketing textbooks will be studying for decades. Michael Jordan had that level of influence, but it took years to develop. Clark reached it in her rookie season. And speaking of Jordan comparisons, let's address the elephant in the room that everyone's dancing around but nobody wants to say directly. The people calling for Clark to appear in Space Jam 3 aren't making jokes or wishful thinking. They're recognizing that she has something LeBron never quite captured, the ability to make basketball look fun instead of just impressive. Jordan had it, Magic had it, Steph Curry has it with his three-point celebrations. Clark has it when she's pulling up from 35 feet with a smile on her face like she's playing pickup at the local park. But here's what's driving me absolutely crazy about how this story is being covered in mainstream sports media. They keep framing this as Caitlin Clark is good for women's basketball, like she's some kind of temporary boost or marketing gimmick. That completely misses the point of what's actually happening here. Clark isn't just helping women's basketball, she's fundamentally changing what professional basketball can look like in America, period. The joy, the accessibility, the connection with younger fans, the focus on community engagement over corporate partnerships. These are innovations that men's basketball could learn from. The NBA has been struggling with declining viewership among younger demographics for years. Their games are too long, too expensive to attend, too focused on individual statistics instead of team chemistry. Meanwhile, WNBA games are faster-paced, more affordable, and somehow feel more connected to the communities they're playing in. Clark is amplifying all of those advantages while adding her own unique brand of must-see television. When she's on the court, anything can happen, and people are tuning in specifically for those unexpected moments. Here's a stat that should terrify every other professional sport in America. Among viewers aged 12-17, WNBA games featuring Clark outperformed MLB playoff games in the same time slots. Baseball, America's supposed pastime, is losing teenage viewers to women's basketball. That's not a temporary trend or a statistical anomaly. That's a generational shift in sports consumption habits, and Clark is at the center of it. The international angle is where this story becomes even more fascinating, and it's something American sports media is completely ignoring. That interview with Telfer Tong wasn't just about reaching Chinese audiences. It was about establishing Clark as a global ambassador for basketball itself. She talked about wanting to play exhibition games in different countries, about learning from international styles of play, about bringing WNBA players to basketball camps worldwide. This is someone thinking about her sport's growth on a planetary scale, not just domestic market expansion. China has 300 million people who play basketball recreationally. If even 1% of them become regular WNBA viewers because of Clark's international outreach efforts, that's 3 million new fans. The television rights for those international markets could fundamentally change the economics of women's professional basketball. And Clark understands this in a way that most American athletes never do. She's not just trying to be famous in the United States. She's positioning herself as the face of basketball globally, which creates opportunities that transcend any single league or country. But let's get back to that 8-month delay from Nike, because the more I think about it, the more it reveals about how slowly major corporations adapt to changing cultural landscapes. They had focus groups, market research, demographic studies, all telling them exactly what we're seeing now, that Clark had the potential to be a transcendent figure in sports marketing. But they still waited 8 months to pull the trigger on a commercial that was probably finished 6 months ago. That's not careful planning. That's institutional inertia preventing companies from moving at the speed of cultural change. Meanwhile, Clark was out there breaking attendance records, setting television ratings, changing the entire conversation around women's sports, basically doing Nike's marketing for them while they sat on a commercial that would have amplified all of that impact. Imagine if that commercial had dropped during March Madness, when Clark was hitting those impossible shots for Iowa. Imagine if it had premiered during her first professional game, when everyone was watching to see if the college magic would translate. Instead, they waited until Christmas Day, which worked beautifully, but think about all the momentum they could have captured earlier. This is exactly the kind of institutional slowness that Clark is working to overcome in every aspect of her career. She's not waiting for the WNBA to figure out international expansion. She's doing interviews with Chinese content creators. She's not waiting for youth basketball organizations to create more opportunities for girls. She's talking publicly about the need for those programs to exist. She's not waiting for television networks to figure out how to market women's sports. She's giving them must-see television that markets itself. And that's what separates her from every other athlete in any sport right now. Most players focus on their individual performance and let their agents, their teams, their leagues handle everything else. Clark is actively participating in building the infrastructure that will support not just her own career, but the careers of players who won't enter the WNBA for another decade. She's thinking about the 8-year-old girl in rural Iowa, but she's also thinking about the 8-year-old girl in rural China, or rural Brazil, or rural Nigeria who might want to play basketball but doesn't see a path forward. That's why this Nike commercial hitting 2.5 million views in 24 hours matters so much more than just marketing metrics. Every view represents someone who's now aware of Caitlin Clark, aware of the WNBA, aware that women's basketball exists at a professional level. Some percentage of those viewers are young girls who will pick up a basketball for the first time because of what they saw. Some will ask their parents about local leagues. Some will stick with the sport long enough to maybe, possibly, make it to the professional level themselves. And here's the beautiful part about Clark's approach to all of this. She genuinely seems to understand that her individual success is meaningless unless it creates opportunities for other people. That interview with Telfer Tong could have been entirely about her own achievements, her own brand deals, her own future plans. Instead, she spent most of it talking about systemic changes that need to happen for women's basketball to reach its full potential. That's not just good public relations. That's visionary leadership from someone who's 22 years old and 1 season into her professional career.